what our profitability percentage should be. So this is one yardstick right here. So if you would, I'm going to now be at the podium because I want to work with you here. Turn to page 3 of your outline and work with me on the tale of two practices. I want to explain something to you before I get into it, and that is I did the balance sheet on the accrual basis, and I did the income statement, the rev statement on the cash basis for illustration purposes only. Don't take it. I wrote this on this disclaimer on the front. So if you take it, your CPA goes, boy, this guy's a crackpot. He's got the balance sheet on the accrual basis and the revenue statement on the cash basis. The reason I did that is just for the purposes of looking at the financial position of this company and how having issues can affect your bottom line. And this was the clearest way to show it. Now, let's take a look at practice A and B. And first, let's look at this financial statement. And trust me, even if you feel you don't have any financial background or acumen, this is not hard stuff to learn. And with a consultant, you should be able to I walk through these with my patients, well, sometimes my clients daily, okay, daily. Page 4 is your balance sheet. And what it basically shows is what you own versus what you owe. And the difference is if the practice has any equity. And believe me, if your practice has down there at the bottom a negative equity, you have a problem. You can see practice B, practice inefficient, is almost at that point. Okay? You're checking your cash, you own your accounts receivable, you own your equipment. The depreciation is what you've written off of that depreciation. The deposits, utilities and rent are monies that you've given the landlord to hold on your lease. You know, you give PICO for all you Pennsylvania residents, a deposit on your utilities. That's an asset because it's an escrow for you. Your liabilities are what you owe. Practice has bills. Most practices, a lot of practices have credit cards. And the practice has debt service. So let's talk about, let's go to page 5. Page 5 reflects efficient practice A and inefficient practice B. And I did this on a cash basis, which means that your gross revenue, fee income, is on fees that were collected and deposited. And your expenses are on expenses that were paid from the practice. And page 5 reflects that revenue and the expenses, which I'm going to go into a little bit more in detail. Please turn to page 6. Page 6 reflects some more expenses, and then the most important part you get down to there is the compensation of the doctor and the practice's net income. Now, what's important here is this is not made up. I'm telling you that I have practices in this range that differentiate in their profitability by this much. That is an absolute fact. So you could say, well, the guy, this is illustration purposes. No, I took information from practices that I actually handle and put this thing together. Believe it or not, I have practices that gross over $1 million that do less than that 28.42% profitability. Okay? But look at the difference in the revenue of the practitioner. And we're going to get into the details here in a second. But do you see you're not writing a check for that difference in revenue? But I want to tell you something. I got practices where they're making that much difference. I don't divulge that to those individuals, but I meet with dentist A on a Wednesday, and then I'll meet with dentist B on a Thursday, and this is the reality. This is the reality. Dentist C, what happens is dentist B's happy. He's like, hey, I'm making $270,000 a year, you know, and I feel pretty good about it. But really, you know, are you doing the best that you could do? Chances are not. Chances are not. Well, not even chances are, actually not. So let's go back now to the balance sheet, and let's talk about applying consulting to the reality of practice profitability. Where it starts, folks, and where I'm called most of the time, as I told you, is because a practitioner will call me, oh, cash flow stinks. As if, you know, he doesn't have a clue as to why. And a lot of times they don't. They have no clue. But chances are when the devil is in the details, when I get the information, it's clear to see. Practice A is structured, has policies, developed yardsticks and monitors them. and their receivables are just a little bit over a month out. Practice B has a receivable, it's 30 pages long and a mess. And we don't even know what's going on with half these people that are over 90 days or 60 days even in some instances, okay? They have no clue. So they got $190,000 in receivables. Now, what this leads to, this is the catalyst, this accounts receivable issue for mismanagement and practices. Because when a practice has that much more in accounts receivable and that much less in cash than the practice A, and you look 30,000 versus 100,000, practice B starts operating from the what I call shell game management. I'll pay this week because I can't pay this week. I won't pay this next week. I got to pay the bank. But I'll tell you some blasphemy. I won't pay the accountant this week. Okay, that's blasphemy. I won't pay this bill. I'll shuffle, and hopefully next week, hopefully, I'll have a windfall of capital that'll come in off of these receivables. Now, and a lot of times they do, but a lot of times they don't. And this is where bad decisions are made. And if you look down in the liability section, this is generally the trend you see. Practice A, okay, has $15,000 in accounts payable. Practice B, 45. B's now saying, you know, I can't shuffle too much. You know, 25,000, my expenses average about, on a practice of this size, Angela, do a little math for me, please. What's 800,000 divided by 12? Divided by 52, I'm sorry. What's it divided by?
15,000.
I got 15,000 in bills I got to pay a week. I better hit that business credit card. Well, I've been doing that. Now it's up to 40. I know what I'll do for management. I'll get another credit card. Okay? I also won't manage my debt. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Practice A managed their debt, actually prepaid some debt off early because of good collections. Their note payable's 55. Practice B on the same equipment and size of practice has an outstanding loan at 215. Okay? Because no management of debt. And it all started with poor collections, which caused the business to do a lot of poor things. So let's talk about these relationships. If you go now to your income statement and look at how these balance sheet relationships affect your profitability, this is where the rubber meets the road. Both these practices produced $1,255,000 in dentistry. Hygiene, dentistry, associate was involved a little bit. And both these practices incurred the expenses on $1,255,000 of production. We all understand that, correct? The difference is, because of poor collections, Practice A collected $1.2 million, or roughly 95, a little bit less than 95%. Practice B, because of their, and I did this basically aging the receivables out too much, only collected $1,130,000. So they're off to the races in terms of lower profitability right there, okay? The other thing that happens, as I said, is that many practices, when they have this cash flow in problem, make mistakes. They borrow incorrectly. They don't pay down their debt. They get credit cards. Okay, they run their accounts